Thoreau said this. He said, if you advance confidently in the direction of your own dreams and endeavor to live the life which you have imagined, you will meet with a success unexpected in common hours. What that means is that success is not something that you can get in life. Success is an inner process. Success is something that you bring to everything you do in your life. It isn't something you get out of what you do. And when you get that, and you learn how to get the junk out and advance confidently, doing what makes the most amount of sense to you based on your inner signals and the one issue of morality, which is you never interfere with anybody else's right to do the same. Each person has their own right to advance confidently in the direction of their own dreams. And when you violate that, you're violating the principle of the universe, the essence of the universe, which is cooperation and harmony. Then success will begin to chase you. And it will come into your life and arrive in your life in amounts that you never dreamt of before. That you never dreamt of. Things will start happening to you that you would never imagine before. I'm working on a book right now that's going to be called You'll See It When You Believe It. And when you start believing in some of these principles, you'll start seeing things that you were blind to for so long. When you were back here in the 2 and the 3 and the 4 and the 5, when you were moving away from yourself, as long as you're moving back towards your universal essence, your harmony with yourself, your cooperation with the rest, things will start happening in ways that you never dreamt of. Jung called it synchronicity. And it's a term that we use to explain how unexplainable coincidences sort of happen in our life. And how come these things happen? I'm going to share a couple of those with you before we leave. The quality versus appearance in your life means that you get that inner candle flame working in a way that gives you quality, independent of what other people think of you. Maslow, in defining self-actualizing, no-limit people, said they are independent of the good opinion of other people. Of the good opinion of other people. Independent of it. They're so busy advancing confidently, doing the things that make sense, and bringing success to changing their baby's diaper, and bringing success to weeding their garden, and bringing it to the job. They bring it on the airplane so that when they run into somebody who is rude to them, a stewardess that is rude, they don't see it as an attack on them. It's just where they are, and they send them love. Help them a little bit, you know? They're kind. When somebody wants to get in on the freeway, and they're one old temptation when they were on the 1 to the 6 side was to say, oh yeah, nobody's getting in front of me. I'm getting there first. It's like, they slow down a little bit. They don't have all that type A stuff of having to beat somebody else and having to defeat somebody. It's a new way of being. It's a way of quality where your harmony allows you to cooperate and you are a part of what this whole thing is about. New way of being, quality rather than appearances. Instead of looking all your life for achievements and externals, try living your life on knowledge for the sake of knowledge. Knowledge instead of achievement. For the sake of knowledge. Being in a context in which you don't have to collect a lot of merit badges. You don't have to collect a lot of awards and other people's value judgments. That you go to school or you go out into the world or you read or whatever it is you do because it makes sense to you, not because of what somebody else is going to put on a transcript or where you're going to appear in a class list. We're in an achievement-oriented society, which tells us that we evaluate and judge a human being based upon how many achievements he has. But most of the people who get caught up in that trap and are always in this circle of trying to get ahead, trying to always get ahead, their reward for that almost always is higher blood pressure, ulcers, early deaths, and even things like cancer, we're beginning to find out, are related to the kinds of stresses that we have. And remember, it's a perfect universe. There's no stress in it. There's only people thinking stressful thoughts. And when you put that pressure on yourself to always achieve and get ahead of the other guy, you miss what it's really all about. There's nothing wrong with goals. It's falling in love with them that's the problem. It's not being able to be flexible and alter them. If you have a goal to get here, to get $100,000 in the bank, to get to this promotion, to get 2 cars in your garage, to whatever it is that your goal is, and you're on your way to that, and you're always working at the goal, all of this stuff on your way to the goal is called striving, and that's what you learn, striving. And striving is a very low-level place to be. When you get to your goal, because all you've ever known is striving, you will just always suffer from this disease called more. You will just upgrade your goal to $200,000, 4 cars and 2 houses and another wife and a younger one and all of these kinds of things. If you have a goal and you understand that every step along the way is a present moment to enjoy and to live, then the goal won't become any obsession. I don't have any goals in my life. People ask me, where are you going to be 5 years from now? What are you going to be doing? What's next for you? I remember what Lincoln said, who to me was like the greatest person who ever sat in that White House. He said, I never had a policy. He said, I just tried to do what made the greatest amount of sense each and every day of my life as I sat there as the President of the United States. And I think there's something really significant in that you don't have to get it all planned out and follow a certain pattern and do it a certain way. If you just sort of trust your inner instincts and go with that and live each moment, the goal stuff will all take care of itself. But if you're sacrificing and pushing your life aside and suffering on your way to trying to get someplace, you'll never get there. It will always elude you, because once you get there, you'll just have to upgrade it. And that's because that's all you'll know. Nowness is that purest form of sanity, living in this moment and enjoying it. And all the rest of it will sort of work its way out.
What has come to become really clear to me in the last few years of my life is that there really are 2 selves within each and every one of us. Muktananda called the ego, the part of us that has edged God out, E-G-O, edged God out, the false self. And the false self is this part of us that is not authentic. It is the ego. This false self is the part of us that is always trying to win, trying to own things, trying to prove itself. We send our kids off to school and we tell them, be ahead of everybody else, win, no matter what, and so on. And they have a tendency to believe that who they are these bodies, even though the body they're in is going to change and you'll never be able to find it again. And then there's within each and every one of us a higher self. And this higher self is really the soul. It's really the spirit. It's really God. But these 2 selves are sort of constantly they're not at war so much with each other, but there's this battleground that we have within us. I'll give you an example of it in my own life. Somebody on the internet, a guy named Watkins, has put out a list, because there's lists for everything. The 100 most spiritually influential people alive. And they put out this list, 100 people. And they rank from number 1 to 100. And I'm on the list. I'm one of the, thank you. Not only am I on the list, but I am, according to this list, and they've got all this criteria of how you get on this list, I am the 3rd most spiritually influential person alive. How about that, huh? So the spiritual part of myself, my soul, the higher place within myself, says to me, this is not relevant. You're not any better than anybody else just because somebody has put you on a list. In fact, you shouldn't even know about that list. And perhaps the people who are most spiritually influential aren't even on that list and don't even want to be on that list because they don't care about those kind of rankings and comparisons and so on. But then there's the ego over here that says, what do you mean number 3? Well, what's going on with that? And who are these people who are more spiritually influential than you? and how you're going to take them down. So there's this sort of constant thing about it shouldn't make any difference. Who I am is, is the same as everyone else. We all come from the same place, and we all return back to the same place. But then the ego says, let's see, the two people ahead of me on this list, one of them is Eckhart Tolle, but he had Oprah. And she's only number 8 on the list anyway, so. And he got on there every week, and that's not fair, so. And then there's the Dalai Lama. And I figure Eckhart and I maybe can get together and take the Dalai Lama out of this thing. Or maybe I should align with the Dalai Lama, and anyway. The ego is doing this, this number on us. But there's also the part of us that is divine. And this is the place that I'm addressing here in this program. There's a quote from Joel Goldsmith. Joel wrote so many great books. A Parenthesis in Eternity was one of them. And this is what Joel said. He said, then there are those who reach a stage in which they realize the futility of this constant striving and struggling for the things that perish, things which after they are obtained prove to be shadows. It is at this stage that some persons turn from this seeking for things in the outer realm to a seeking for them from God. And that's who you tuned into today on this program. I have left this pursuing things and money and fame and winning and being better than others. It's taken me a while, but it has been a powerful journey. As a matter of fact, I had said to my ex-wife, I said, can you imagine? Did you ever, in your wildest dreams, could you ever have imagined that you would be married to the third most spiritually influential person alive? And she said, they didn't call me when they made that list. And she said also, I don't want to upset you, dear, but you're not in my wildest dreams. I said, well, all right. So moving to this higher place is really understanding that in the second chapter of Wishes Fulfilled, I call it the higher self. And it gets defined very specifically by this great Bulgarian teacher. His name was Omram Mikhail Ivanov. And he was teaching what's called the initiatic sciences. And I have had his teachings show up in my life in a very powerful way. I've studied his writing. I've listened to many of his recorded lectures that took place back in the 50s and 60s and 70s. And I brought a quote of his that I'd like to share with you. Our higher self is perfect, omniscient, and almighty, a fragment of God himself, a pure, transparent, luminous quintessence. I love that. I love great writing like that. And that within each and every one of us, there is a place inside of each and every one of us that is all-knowing, that is almighty, that is actually a fragment of God. He then went on to say, the Creator has planted within every creature a fragment of himself, a spark, a spirit of the same nature of himself. And thanks to this spirit, every creature can become a creator. And this means that instead of always waiting for their needs to be satisfied by some external source, human beings can absolutely work inwardly by means of their own thoughts, their own will, and their own spirit to obtain nourishing, healing elements that they need. This is why he said to all of us, the teaching I bring to you is of the Spirit of the Creator, and not of matter. A spark that is in each and every one of us.
Your emotions are the inner experience that tell you how much of the divine energy you're summoning for the manifestation of your desires. Feelings can be measuring tools that gauge how you're doing in the manifestation process. An exceptionally positive emotional response indicates that you're summoning the divine energy of intention and allowing that energy to flow to you in a non-resistant manner. Feelings of passion, pure bliss, reverence, unmitigated optimism, unquestioned trust, and even illumination indicate that your desire to manifest success and abundance, for example, have an extremely strong pulling power from the universal source directly to you. You must learn to pay close attention to the presence of these feelings, agents which are in charge of how you clean and purify the connecting link to intention. These emotions tell you precisely how much of the life force you're summoning and how much pulling power you have going for you at that moment. Your feelings indicate how well you're attracting the energy necessary for the fulfillment of your desires. Strong feelings of despair, anxiety, blame, hate, fear, shame, and anger, they're all sending you the message that you want success and abundance, but you don't believe it's possible for you. These negative feelings are your clues to get busy and balance your desires with those of the universal mind of intention, which is the only source of that which you desire. Negative emotions tell you that your pulling power from intention is weak or even non-existent. Positive emotions tell you that you're connecting to and accessing this power of intention. Concerning abundance, one of the most effective ways to increase that pulling power from intention to you is to take the focus off of dollars and place it on creating abundant friendship, security, happiness, health, and even high energy. It's here that you begin to feel those higher emotions, which let you know that you're back in the match game with the all-creating source. As you focus on having abundant happiness, health, security, and friendships, the means for acquiring all of this will be flowing directly toward you. Money is only one of those means, and the faster your vibrational energy around abundance radiates, the more money will show up in significant amounts. These positive feelings as indicators of your pulling power for success and abundance will put you into an active mode for co-creating your intentions. I'm not suggesting that you just have to sit around and wait for everything to fall into place. I'm suggesting that by declaring, I intend to feel successful and attract prosperity, your emotional energy will shift and you'll act as if what you desire were already true. Your actions will be in harmony with the faces of intention, and you'll be provided with what you are rather than attempting to be provided with what's missing. Monitor your emotions as a guidance system for your connection to the universal mind of intention. When you're experiencing low-energy emotions of rage, anger, hatred, anxiety, despair, and the like, that's a clue that while your desires may be strong, they're completely out of sync with the field of intention. Remind yourself in these moments that you want to feel good, and see if you can activate a thought that supports your feeling good. Develop an attitude of gratitude for all that manifests into your life. Be thankful and filled with awe and appreciation, even if what you desire hasn't arrived yet. Even the darkest days of your life are to be looked on with gratitude. Everything coming from Source is on purpose. Be thankful while empowering your reconnection to that from which you and everything else originated. The energy that creates worlds and universes is within you. It works through attraction and energy. Everything vibrates. Everything has a vibratory frequency. As St. Paul once said, God is able to provide you with every blessing in abundance. Tune to God's frequency, and you will soon know it beyond any and all doubt. Remember that your natural state is joy. You are a product of joy and love. It's natural for you to experience these feelings. You've come to believe that feeling bad, anxious, or even depressed is natural, particularly when people and events around you are in low-energy modes. Remind yourself as frequently as necessary, I come from peace and joy. Anytime I'm anxious, stressed out, depressed, or fearful, I've abandoned my natural state. Make a conscious choice to select a thought that will activate good feelings. I urge you to choose your thought based exclusively on how it makes you feel rather than how popular it is or how well advertised. Ask yourself, does this new thought make me feel good? No? Well, how about this thought? Not really. Here's another. Ultimately, you'll come up with one that makes you feel good, if only temporarily. Your choice might be the thought of a beautiful sunset, the expression of the face of someone that you really love, or a thrilling experience. It's only important that it resonate within you emotionally and physically as a good feeling. Spend some time observing babies and vow to emulate their joy. You didn't come forth into this world to suffer, to be anxious, fearful, stressful, or depressed. You came from the God consciousness of joy. Just watch little babies. They've done nothing to be so happy about. They don't work, they poop in their pants, and they have no goals other than to expand and grow and explore this amazing world. They love everyone. They're completely entertained by a plastic bottle or a goofy face, and they're in a constant state of love. Yet they have no teeth, no hair, and they're pudgy and flatulent. How could they possibly be so joyful and easily pleased? Because they're still in harmony with the source that intended them here. They have no resistance to being joyful. Be like that baby you once were in terms of being joyful. You don't need a reason to be happy. Your desire to be so is sufficient. Rabindranath Tagore, one of my favorite spiritual teachers. I slept, he says, and dreamt that life was joy. I awoke and saw that life was service. I acted, and behold, service was joy. It can all be joy in your inner and outer worlds. Sleep and dream of joy, and remember above all else, you feel good, not because the world is right, but your world is right because you feel good. Everything you need to have total happiness and fulfillment and success and love in your life, you already have. You already have it right now. Wherever you are, whoever you are, you have it right this minute. Just a matter of deciding to believe that. A woman asked me one time, what are the blocks to my happiness? She said, what are the blocks? I want to know the blocks. I said, the belief that you have blocks. You believe you have blocks. As soon as you believe you have blocks, you create the need to have blocks. And now you want to find out what the blocks are. There are no blocks out there. If you send them all away, stop believing that you'll have blocks. Then you stop looking for the blocks, and you stop defending the blocks, and you look for something else. People tend to blame circumstances for their unhappiness. They say, someone close to me is sick, and that makes me unhappy. And I said to them, no, that doesn't make you unhappy. Someone else close to you is sick that cannot make you unhappy. And they say, well, how is that possible? What do you mean? They're sick and I'm unhappy and they must be making me unhappy. I said, no, supposing that same person was sick and you didn't know about it. You just didn't know they were sick. Could you be unhappy? Well, of course not. How could I be unhappy about something I didn't know about? Well, they were sick. Their sickness didn't cause you to be unhappy. Their sickness existed independent of you. It's when you find out about it and process it and think about it in a certain way and you say, oh, that shouldn't be happening. Oh, that's awful. Or, oh, that's my friend. Or, that's my mother. Or, those things shouldn't be happening to me. People don't want to take the responsibility and say, I am making myself unhappy by what I see in life. Now, you may not want to be joyful about someone close to you being sick, but you have to be responsible for what's going on inside of you. My job was to teach people how to find methods to be able to manage their emotions more effectively. I now believe that you have to be the method. Okay? There is no method that you can find. You can't rely on a method any more than if you're overweight, you can rely on a diet, or if you're smoking, you can rely on a cure or hypnotism or some kind of thing external to yourself. Or if you want to be religious, you can't rely on someone else to do it for you. It's that being that is the big difference. I believe I was directed to help people to understand that they have greatness within them and not to fear that greatness. That the reason people are not good at getting what they want out of life is not so much that they don't have the skills or the abilities, but in fact they don't think that they deserve it. Or if they do think they deserve it, they're afraid of it because it's bigger than I am. And there's a truth out there in the universe someplace, however it works, and I'm studying this now for some books I'll be writing in the future, that says you are not going to get it all. You are it all. You are not going to find happiness. You are happiness. You bring happiness to what you do in life rather than trying to get happiness out of what you do. Big difference between those two premises. Because you're not searching for happiness anymore when you have it within you. I always tell people I'm not in the pleasure business. Right? I'm in the happiness business or the joy business, not in the pleasure business. even though pleasure's great. The distinction I make here is that when you become enlightened, you begin to find happiness in the absences of pleasure in your life. You can find happiness in that. You can embrace your colds, if you will, your headaches or your backaches or whatever, as opportunities. Rather than saying that if I don't have all pleasure, then I can't be happy, what you say is, I am happy even with the things that I don't like that are going on in my life right now. So you learn to find joy in those and embrace those things rather than trying to always send them away. And the suffering that you're experiencing, if you just stop right now and look at your payoffs for it and why you continue to do it, you will see that your suffering comes from wanting the world to be different than it is, or wanting somebody in the world to be different than they are. And when you stop that, when you just accept rather than want, then your suffering has to go out the window with it. And this is not to say that you can't desire things. You don't even have to say you can't want things. You can certainly want anything. But to need it for me to be happy must go. To understand what we're talking about here, you must understand that bringing happiness to something is very much different than trying to get it out of something. And when you are bringing it to something, then you always have it. When you're looking for it, it will always elude you. Always. So this business about forgiveness, now, I want to tell you that whatever you got going for you in your life in the way of animosity or bitterness or anguish or pain or whatever, towards any other human being on our planet, whoever they are and what they've done, that the toxic reaction to that bitterness, it will never let go of you. That forgiveness is like the greatest motivator, if you will, in the world. Towards anyone or anything, hanging on to anything painful or hurtful and so on, I personally believe you've got to let go of. Not only do you have to let go of it, you don't have to make any phone calls, you don't have to let anybody else know that you're doing it. In your heart, you have to purify yourself in such a way that you just simply say, love is forgiving. And that's 2 words, and it's 1 word. When it's 1 word, it's love is forgiving. All right? And that's what it is. You must forgive. And it's also forgiving, so you don't ask anything back of it. After I did that, my whole life became so clear and so focused, and where I was going became so evident, and I left there and I outlined my book the following week. And let me tell you that I have never had a dream about my father since. I have never had a moment's anguish of any kind toward him or anything that he has done. In fact, I am completely at peace with him, and I send him love wherever he is. Whatever is going on in who he is and where he is and what it is, it's all fine. It's all okay. In fact, without those experiences that were the result of some of the things that he had done, my opportunity to help so many people and to create wonderful things for others, including myself, would never ever have materialized without that. And I see that, and I see the need for that, and I believe in it. And I also want to say to you, whatever you got inside of you is not the result of what anybody else puts there. It's the result of what you decide to have inside of you. Think for a minute about an orange. And when I've given this analogy many times, you take an orange and you squeeze it as hard as you can squeeze it, just, all right? And what comes out? These are easy questions, folks. Honest, don't look puzzled. Everybody passes, all right? Nobody fails tonight. What comes out is orange juice. But the question is, why, when you squeeze an orange real hard, does orange juice come out? And the answer to that is because that's what's inside. These are really easy. They get easier. All right? Now, does it matter who squeezes? Does it matter what instrument you use? Does it matter what time of the day you do it? Does it matter how you do it? When you do it? No. When you squeeze an orange, what comes out of an orange is what's inside. When you squeeze a person and put pressure on a person of any kind, and anger and hatred and stress and tension and depression come out, it isn't because of who is doing the squeezing or when they do it or how they choose to do it. It's because that's what's inside. And if you don't have it inside, it can never come out, no matter who you're living with. no matter how tough it may seem to you. And when somebody cuts you off on the freeway and you're mad as hell and going to get even with them, and you're going to get up in front of them and slow down and make them see what it's like, it isn't because they cut you off that you're so upset. It's because that's what you carry around inside. And when you stop carrying that around inside, nothing that anybody does can upset you. No one can make a fool of you without your consent. Eleanor Roosevelt. No one can depress you. No one can make you anxious. No one can hurt your feelings. No one can make you anything other than what you allow inside. You see, my evolution has brought me to the point of understanding that each human being on our planet must take total responsibility for his own inner development, for his own inner development. And our inner development is something that we ignore a lot as we progress through this whole ladder of life. And I think of a metaphor. The metaphor is like a candle, and the candle flame that is burning inside of you. All right? Now this candle flame, if you take a candle and walk out of here this evening and you see raindrops falling, it'll blow out your candle, and the wind will blow out your candle. There's all kinds of things that are going to happen outside of you that you have absolutely no control over to blow out your candles. Your candles are getting blown out all the time. We have an inner candle flame that must never flicker, though the worst goes before us. And that's perhaps the highest place we can get to in our lives, is to understand that what our own inner development symbolized by that candle flame must never change, must never even flicker. It is our responsibility, not only for ourselves, but for our children as well, to raise them to believe that whatever is going on inside of you is entirely up to you. You own it. It is yours.
And then it's necessary to begin to look at how you can unbond yourself from your past wounds. The inclination to bond to our wounds rather than move past them traps us in a constant state of feeling unworthy. A person who has experienced traumatic events in life, such as incest or abuse or sexual molestation or the death of loved ones or traumatic illnesses or accidents or family disruptions or drug addictions, can become bonded to them and replay them for attention or pity. Very often the tale of these woes is told with a sort of urgency for the listener to know how horrible the wounding was and still is. The ego uses this energy as a power play in individual and group situations to encourage discussion of one's struggle to survive the wounding. This can keep individuals from advancing spiritually and reinforce the image of themselves as unfortunate. The tendency to bond with the wounds of our lives reminds us of how unworthy we are of receiving anything that we really would like because we remain in a state of suffering. The more these painful stories are recalled and repeated, the more we are guaranteed of not attracting our desires. Notice your body when it is wounded. An open wound actually closes up quite quickly. Just imagine what it would be like if that wound remained open for a long time. It would become infected and ultimately would kill the entire organism. The closing up of a wound and allowing it to heal can work the same way in your inner world of thoughts. When you go backward and continuously relive your pain, including labeling yourself incest survivor, alcoholic, sexual abuse survivor, you do so because of your inner experiences of bitterness. This harvest of bitterness keeps you from feeling worthy. So don't lead with your injuries. Deal with them and ask family and friends to be compassionate while you are grieving or recuperating. Then ask them to kindly remind you when it has taken on the form of a predictable response. The way out of bonding to your wounds is through forgiveness. Forgiveness is the most powerful thing you can do for your physiology and your spirituality. Forgiveness means that you fill yourself with love and you radiate that love outward and refuse to hang on to the venom or hatred that was engendered by the behaviors that caused the wounds in the first place. Forgiveness is a spiritual act of love for yourself, and it sends a message to everyone, including yourself, that you are an object of love, and that is what you are going to impart. Feeling worthy is essential to being able to attract to yourself what you desire. It is simply a matter of common sense. If you don't feel that you deserve something, why would the divine energy that is in all things send it your way? Let's look at a plan for adopting and honoring your worthiness to receive and attract from the divine source. The word inspiration literally means to be infused with spirit. In spirit, if you will. Practice doing what you love and loving what you do each day. This puts you in spirit and literally provides you with the enthusiasm for being a worthy recipient of God's grace. The word enthusiasm comes from the Greek root entheos, to be filled with God. Then make every effort to remove internal habits of pessimism, negativity, judgment, complaints, gossip, cynicism, resentment, and fault-finding from your vocabulary and your inner dialogue. Replace them with optimism, love, acceptance, kindness, and peace as your way of processing your world and the people in it. Then give yourself quiet time each day to erase feelings of unworthiness. And also read spiritual literature and poetry and listen to soothing classical music whenever possible. I have found that simply reading the poetry of Walt Whitman or Rabindranath Tagore or Rumi puts everything into a more sacred perspective for me. This beautiful poem from Khalil Gibran's The Prophet is an example of such literature. Pay particular attention to the words, "Your hearts know in silence the secrets of the days and nights," and "For the soul walks upon all paths." Here's Khalil Gibran on self-knowledge. And a man said, "Speak to us on self-knowledge." And he answered, saying, "Your hearts know in silence the secrets of the days and nights, but your ears thirst for the sound of your heart's knowledge. You would know in words that which you would have always known in thought. You would touch with your fingers the naked body of your dreams. And it is well you should. The hidden wellspring of your soul must needs rise and run murmuring to the sea, and the treasure of your infinite depths would be revealed to your eyes, but let there be no scales to weigh your unknown treasure, and seek not the depths of your knowledge with staff or sounding line, for self is a sea boundless and measureless. Say not, I have found the truth, but rather, I have found a truth. Say not, I have found the path of the soul. Say rather, I have met the soul walking upon my path. For the soul walks upon all paths. The soul walks not upon a line, neither does it grow like a reed. The soul unfolds itself like a lotus of countless petals. Allow yourself to be surrounded by things of beauty as much as possible. Each evening I leave my typewriter and I go out to the beach and I experience the magnificence of the sun setting over the Gulf of Mexico. To be a part of this sunset fills me with a sense of home beyond this planet and opens me up to the deeper nature within myself. I could never feel unworthy of the grace and munificence of the universe when I'm immersed in such beauty. Virtually any experience of beauty has a tendency to remove doubt about your own divinity and connection to the ultimate truth that is in everything and everyone. And then practice kindness toward yourself and others as frequently as possible. Give up your need to be right and to win in favor of being kind, and you will soon know the bliss of inner peace. Remember, your highest self only wants peace. When you are practicing kindness, peace shows up right on schedule. When you are at peace with yourself and your world, you know that you are a worthy recipient of all that comes your way. Make it your own special mission to be kind to others each day at least once, and to extend the same privilege to yourself as much as possible. Also, begin to process the universe as a friendly rather than an unfriendly place. Place all of your wounds from the earlier stages of your life into the category lessons for life. Remember, for every act of evil, there are a million acts of kindness. This universe runs on the energy of harmony and balance. Breathe in that energy and breathe out the ideas of your being life's victim. And finally, say it over and over until it registers. I am what I am, and I am worthy of the abundance that is the universe and all that is in it, including me.
Spiritual is a way of being. It is a lesson that most people haven't learned, because we think of things as religious as being spiritual. To be spiritual to me means to be connected to the source from which all things emanate. And that doesn't just mean that you go around and do things in a positive, religious, nice way. It means that you are spiritually connected on a vibrational level. So that if you look at the source from which all things come, and if you had magical binoculars that you could just sort of tune into and see what it looks like and what it feels like and what it sounds like. What it sounds like this. It says, this source says, I am the source of all material and spiritual worlds. Everything emanates from me. What it looks like love, it looks like kindness, and mostly it excludes no one and no thing. And so when you have an organization or a thought that excludes some and includes others, which is what almost all organized religion does, it really deviates from the source energy that I'm speaking about here, because source energy and spiritual are the same. So that every thought that we have that says, I get it but you don't, I'm better than you are, I'm number one and you're number two, you live on that side of the river, I live on this side of the river, therefore I am entitled to something and you're not. Anything that excludes is non-spiritual. So all we have to do is think, one of the great teachers in India many, many years ago, around the time of Christ, even before, was a man named Patanjali. And he said these words about spirituality. He said, when you are steadfast in your abstention of thoughts of harm directed toward yourself or others, all living creatures will cease to feel fear in your presence. So all you have to do is be steadfast. That's what the great spiritual masters all gave us. It's like when people ask me, well, are you a spiritual man? I say, I fluctuate. There are times when I just am the most giving and loving and creative and kind and focused on God, human being as I can be. But there are other times when I lose it. There are times when I get frustrated. There are times when I possibly think of myself as, having accomplished so many things, so my ego gets in the way and so on. But when you're steadfast and you never have thoughts that separate yourself from others, and when you never exclude anyone, and when you are no longer having thoughts of harm of any kind, and that means thoughts of judgment directed towards yourself or others, then all living creatures, and that's why St. Francis, for example, would have living creatures would no longer feel anger or hatred in his presence.
Can you one day get to the level where you don't fluctuate any longer?
Even the least among you can do all that I have done, and even greater things. I mean, that's just right out of the scriptures that all of us have within us, because there's not a human being on this planet who isn't connected to Source. The fact that, when you go to bed tonight and you look at your fingernails, you know that tomorrow morning they're going to be just a little bit longer than they were the night before. But you don't go to bed and say, I got to really work on these fingernails. I got to grow them tonight, and I got to beat my heart, and I got to grow my hair, and I've got to digest my food. There's a force, there's a source in the universe that is doing all of this for you, and all of us came from that source. And then we forgot. We forgot, and we took on these egos, and these egos say that who I am is what I have and what I do and what other people think of me, and who I am is separate and better than other people and separate from God. All you have to do, you see, Course in Miracles puts it this way. It says that being spiritual is not about learning new things. It's about remembering. So it goes like this. The memory of God comes to the quiet mind. It cannot come where there is conflict. A mind at war with itself remembers not eternal gentleness. What you remember is who you are, for you must be as God created you. And then it says, be done with this madness and return to the quiet remembrance of God. It's just about remembering. It's about going back to where you came from, living from that perspective, imagining what that source is like, seeing it as a vibration and energy, and reaching for thoughts that vibrate more in harmony with that energy. That's all it takes.
When we're born, a ladder, Rumi said, when you are born, a ladder is placed before you to help you to escape from this world, to teach you that you're in this world, but you're not of this world. And you're always moving toward this place and at the top of the ladder is this thing called divine love. And it's always a movement toward that. And many times, the rungs on that ladder are rungs that are tough, are what you call crises, But in fact, they are great, great teachers. I haven't had alcohol in my body in 25 years. I don't look back on the days that I did drink or do drugs and so on as anything other than just tremendous teachers for me. They were probably one of the most important decisions I ever made in my life, and I was never even an alcoholic. I quit drinking because my teacher in India said, if you want to reach your highest maximum potential, you'll have to live a life of total sobriety because you're destroying brain cells when you put alcohol into your system. And you came here with big dharma. And if you want to fulfill that dharma, you have to keep your brain, where it's always growing instead of where it's always deteriorating. And that was the day I just decided that I wasn't going to do that. I've been through divorce. I've been through being left. I've been through cancer. I've been through a heart attack. These are all, every single one of those, like every advance that you make in your life, is almost always preceded by some kind of a fall, some kind of a, it's like when I always give the example, when I was in high school, I was on the track team. I was the high jumper on the track team. Now, I didn't jump very high because I'm white. And white men don't jump, and they even made a movie about it, okay?
But anyway, so the way that you get over the bar is you run up to the bar as fast as you can, you get down as low as you can. And in the process of getting down low, you generate the energy to propel yourself over the bar. That's how and the lower you get and the faster you go, the more energy you can generate that way. You propel yourself to a higher place. That's sort of a metaphor for everything in life. If you are in a place of crisis, and you're in a place of where you're low and down and hurt, that almost always means that you're going to have a spiritual elevation. You're going to move yourself to a higher place. That will give you the energy to propel yourself upward. And I've just always believed that now stay in a place of gratitude for everything that comes along. And instead of, I've always said there are 3 ways to reach enlightenment, okay? One is enlightenment through suffering. So with enlightenment through suffering, what you do is you have a experience. Let's say you did a lot of drinking, or you were carousing, or whatever it may be, you were sickly or whatever, and then or somebody breaks up with you and so on, and then you suffer, and oh my God, how did this happen, and why did I do that, and why did she leave me, and how could that have, and then you go through like 10 years. So that's a 10-year chunk of your life where you're suffering, and ultimately you get to this place where you finally, and almost everyone will tell you, about that crisis. When I look back on it, I realize that it was what allowed me to get to a higher place. So that's one way. The second way is enlightenment through living in the present. That is, when a crisis comes along, and you find yourself upset or hurt or whatever, instead of waiting 10 more years of suffering, what you do is you stop yourself right in this moment and you say, what can I do what do I have to learn here? How can I get down on my knees and be thankful to God for this opportunity which is being presented to me, and so on. So you're taking a hold of it in the present moment, which is what I do now with any crisis that may show up in my life. Is I just say I don't have any more 10-year periods. You only get so many of those, and then it's checkout time. So it's so now it's like you get a hold of it right now and you say, what do I have to learn from this? Like I've been suffering with this neck thing for 7 or 8 months, but every day I'd say thank you for it, and how much that it has taught me to be more compassionate toward people who live in chronic pain, for one example, and so many others, to be less judgmental, to say, to find the place within me where I can heal myself and so on. So it becomes an impetus for my growth. That's the second way to enlightenment. Now the third way to enlightenment is where you want to get to, and that's where you can get out in front of the crisis before it arrives. And you can see it coming. And you know that and you can play it out you can play out the whole dialogue in advance. So that you're in an argument, whatever, with your spouse or whatever, and you know that she says something, and normally your way of reacting is, well, then, if you think, I'm going to make me wrong, then I'm going to make you wrong, and if I say this, and you play out the dialogue, if I say this, then she's going to say that, and then I'm going to say this, and then she's going to say, then I'm going to do this, and then I'm probably going to walk out, and I'm going to be pissed off for a while, and then, it's like, and you play out, but you do this instantaneously, and you stop and you say, honey, that's a good point. You're right about that. I'll really give it some thought. And it doesn't matter. You have a choice to be right or to be kind, and you just pick kind. It's just very simple. Nothing changes. She's still wrong. At least in your mind she is, or whatever. But you're free. You're free. And so you've gotten out in front of it. And you can go through life living peacefully and in grace by, instead of suffering and instead of struggling in the present moment to figure out what the problem is, you just start seeing that stuff coming, so that when you're walking down a street and across the street you see someone that might be dangerous, or this might be a situation I don't want to be in, instead of going over there, and even potentially creating some kind of, you just say, well, you know what, I just think I'll just walk around this way, and you've avoided it all. You don't even have to deal with it. You don't have to get your macho ego involved in it. You're just simply getting to a point where you can anticipate this, since there's no time in the universe anyway, then you just let the time thing go, and you just create for yourself exactly the world that you want to be. And as I've said hundreds and thousands of times, it's on my stationery, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. The world is a different world when you look at it from, like this neck thing that I have. I look at it totally differently than I would have even 10 years ago. And now it's just grace. It's just grace, and whatever it is I'm to learn from it, I'm getting.
It seems to me that I have always known this, and that I came into this world knowing that you become what you think about, whether you want it or not. I was really very blessed. I lived in an orphanage until I was 10, in a series of foster homes with my older brother, but he was sick quite a bit. He was very anemic, and I used to have to help him as a young boy. He was 16 months older than I was, and this was when I was 4, 5, 6, and 7, and so on. I can remember whenever a new child would come to the house, they would always say, "Go find Wayne." And I would be out in the back. They had orchards there, and this was no hardship. This was no difficult thing for me. This was a great blessing, I think, in my life. Those earliest days. And I can remember a girl named Martha came, and they were dropping her off for basically the same reasons that we were dropped off there. And they said, "Go find Wayne." And I came and I started talking to Martha, and she was crying, and she was all upset, and she was sad, and I was trying to convince her that she didn't have to be sad, that this was, and I remember saying to her, "This is a great place. There's no parents here. You can do pretty much anything that you want. I mean, you've got a lot of freedom, and we're going to have a great time." And I can remember being in school, at the public school. It was a numbered school. They didn't even name them in that day. It was PS number 127. And one time, we were out on the playground, and all the kids were all upset. And I said, "What's wrong?" And they said, "Well, the teacher said this is the worst class that she ever had." And she was so all upset, and she was angry, and she was hurt. And I said, "Well, why would you allow her opinions to have anything to, if this is her hardest day, then her life is just easy." And I can remember talking to other people about, all you have to do is change the way you think. And it goes from being a miserable experience or a tough experience or a hard experience to one that you can do anything that you want with. And when my mother got our family all back together again when I was nine, almost 10 years old. And I can remember her telling me what it was like when I was just a baby, when I was just like an infant, that I was the one child that could make everybody else laugh at times when everybody else would. She said we were waiting for a bus one time when we were just real babies, before I went into the orphanage. And she said a car came by, and it was in Detroit, and there was all this slush, and we all went flying down. Everybody had dirt on them and dirty snow, and we were laying in the ground, and everybody was crying. And she said, "You were and upset and mad because our clothes were wet and so on." And she said, "You just stood up and said, this is great, isn't this wonderful? Look, we don't have to do this, and we don't, just turning it into something positive." It's like, so the ability to be able to do that was something. I can't remember a time in my life when I didn't know that if I really went to work on how I thought, that things just didn't have to be bad. I was the richest kid in the orphanage. I've talked about that many times in my lectures. That a snowstorm was a time we had 2 snow shovels at the home, and one of them had the edges all curled up from hitting the curbs, and you couldn't make any money with that one. So the other one, when it would snow, I would go downstairs and I would take the good snow shovel and I would put it under my bed, and I'd sleep with it right with me in the bed so that nobody else would get it. And I would get up before everybody else got up, and I would go out and I would just shovel everybody else's snow, shovel their walk. And then later on, I'd just go knock on the door and just tell them that I shoveled their walk. And some would say thank you, and some would give me a dime, which doesn't sound like much, but that's about $3,000 in today's money. And when I found out that soda pop bottles, for example, were worth 2 cents each, that if you took them back, you could get 2 cents back, that was just like one of the great awarenesses and awakenings of my life, because I would follow people around who were drinking a Coca-Cola and say, "You almost done with that?" They said, "Well, no, I'm not going." Well, just whenever you're ready. I just follow them, and they'd walk until. And we had a coal bin where we lived, because it was coal furnaces, and we filled that coal bin with soda pop bottles, and I would take it back. It was just always easy to change, and all the other kids would be not having any money and complaining about not being able to have abundance or be able to have some level of being able to buy themselves like just a little donut or a Pepsi Cola or something. They couldn't figure it out. And it always seemed so easy to me that all you had to do was just look around and see the opportunities in anything. And it had nothing to do with whether there are opportunities there. There always are opportunities. You know, I'm 67 years old. I have never, ever been unemployed or even can't even deal with the concept of unemployment. It isn't that I've had no job. I've always had more jobs than and it isn't because I've been through all good economic times. There've been some pretty sour economic times over the last 50 years or so. I just have never known how to think any other way than, if you change the way you think about things, you can create whatever it is you want for yourself in your life. It's just a simple knowing. I mean, I've made a living talking about it. I've written lots of books about it and so on, but I have always lived it and practiced it, and I still do today.
And you've got to understand the 7 words, I think, that were most important ever strung together came out of Proverbs in the Old Testament. As you think, so shall you be. As you think, so shall you be. Now, it doesn't say, as you be, so shall you think, even though that's how most of us run our lives. Those words are really all out crucial, because once you get it and understand that what you think about is what expands, as you think, so shall you be is what rules the universe. Once you know it, not just believe it, but once you know it, then you start getting real careful about what you think about. Real careful. Because all of those thoughts, all of those doubts are the things that will manifest themselves into your life. Now, it's real simple matter to shift around and begin to pay attention first to the spirit, the invisible side of you, and secondly, to the physical part of you. Most of us don't do that. And it's such a simple matter, I can give you just like a real brief example of how it works. Most of us are as you be, so shall you think kinds of people. So that when things happen to us in the physical world, whatever they may be, we allow our inner world to be affected by them. And so, between my office and my home, it's a 17-mile drive that I make every day, twice a day. Now, there was a time when I would get in my car, when I was an as you be, so shall you think kind of person, when I didn't understand the simple words that James Allen wrote in the last century when he said, "Circumstances do not make a man, they reveal him." The circumstances of our life reveal the kinds of choices that we've been making. And I used to get in my car and drive to my home, and depending upon how the traffic went, or whether there was construction, or whether there were delays, or whether there were difficulties, or struggles, or problems, I would then allow my mood at home to be determined by that. And then I learned how to shift that, and how to first begin to visualize in my mind what it is that I wanted this trip to be like for myself. And I do this every day now before I get in the car. I get a picture of how it's going to be in the next half an hour. Very peaceful. It takes me about a minute and a half. 2 or 3 deep breaths. This is going to be a peaceful, wonderful trip home. I'm not going through any yellow lights. The little lady who drives that 1977 Cadillac in the left-hand lane, she's had the seat removed from her car. She sits on the floorboard and you can just see this little head sitting up there. She has signed an oath to drive around aimlessly, delay me. She's in divine order. She's exactly where she belongs. I'm going to bless her today instead of being mad at her. I'm going to understand that this is a perfect universe and that it's all in order and that I don't have to rush And if there's construction, it's supposed to be there. There's no accidents. There's no accidents. And I'm going to take my time, and I'm just going to be very peaceful all the way home. As you think, so shall you be. And then I get in the car, and there she is, sure enough, about 2 miles from the house, and I waved, and I thank you for being here. If I were to try to go around you like I used to, I would probably have a head-on collision, or there's an officer there to give me a traffic ticket or whatever. I bless you for being there. And I get home, and I don't go through any lights, any yellow light. Don't rush, don't change lanes. Very peaceful. And I get home at the same time every day. Same time as I used to, only I'm now allowing myself to understand a very simple premise.
How we perceive something within ourselves, in the environment within us, how we perceive it can literally take the things that are going on inside of us and alter them and change them. Can you imagine that? So it's like a whole new way of thinking.
As you begin to more and more harmonize in this way, what happens is that you start elevating your thoughts so that the habit of how you think becomes more harmonized rather than a polarity with what you want to attract. It becomes harmonized with it, and it becomes your natural way of how you think all the time.